right, welcome back to another episode of the 100% Wild podcast. I'm Mark Kenyon with Wired to Hunt. I got Matt Drury with Drury Outdoors here next to me.
Hello, hello.
It's great to have you. Well, it's great for me to be here, I guess. You're always here.
I am literally always here at the studio. A little more tree therapy would be nice.
I know. You got to work that into the deal this coming hunting season.
There is no deal.
But
I'm handcuffed.
I know. You're in the family. No negotiations, right?
There's no getting out.
Yeah, it could be worse.
It could be. I don't know, though. I had the guy reach out to me at the end of last season, an outfitter, and he said, hey, I may have said this already, but he goes, hey, I noticed that you're the only Drury that doesn't kill any big deer. Do you want to come out for a hunt? I'm like, yeah, thanks.
Thanks for that. The nice offer, but then the backhanded.
Yeah. But he's true.
No, you killed a couple of nice bucks last year.
Yeah. Good year for having a baby November 4th and everything else going on. So.
Oh, yeah, a lot of guys would kill for that season.
Yeah, it was good.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of November and shooting big bucks, we got a great guest today, don't we?
Yeah, we got Nick Mundt from the Bone Collectors. This is a guy that we've known for a long time. He's one of the best in the industry, and he's one of the nicest guys in the industry, more than anything. So, like, the fun guy that comes off on TV, like, that's how he is in real life. How's it going, Nick?
Good, man. Thanks for the accolades.
You guys just had a baby as well, right?
Yeah, we did. We sure did. She's 3.5 months now. Her name's Della Rose. So
beautiful.
Going good. Life changer for sure.
It's a game changer.
Yeah. I just saw on your Facebook page a picture of you from this spring with like 5 of you all crammed into a ground blind. I was pretty impressed with that. How'd that hunt go?
That was a gift from God. I had a camera up, and so across the road from this I got an 85-acre piece of property. And across the road from there was an unpicked cornfield, so I was seeing all these turkeys in that field, and then they'd come back across the highway and back into the trees. And I put up a camera, and so every day about 6 o'clock I was seeing them come by this field edge on the edge of the timber. So got the whole family out there, had the baby, Mallory, and then Jack and June, the kids. And so Jack wanted to run a camera, so I gave him a little camera. Mallory had my big camera. She was holding the baby. Baby was crying. June, our 5-year-old, was all over the place, was bored, wanted to go home. So anyway, long story short, about 6 o'clock, I said, all right, everybody quiet. We got to just be quiet for 15 minutes. And so everybody kind of quieted down. I called a few times, and there was still mass chaos. All of a sudden, everybody quieted down, and I looked out the window, and there was a big fire about a mile away, so I was kind of entertaining the kids with that plume of smoke. And I just look over, and here comes a big old gobbler right to the decoy, and came in, had the decoys at about 12 yards probably. And so I was able to set June off my lap, get my bow drawn, and got all the cameras going, and shot this gobbler right off the decoy, and it was just a miracle.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
Unbelievable miracle.
It's amazing what a ground blind and a decoy can do to a turkey.
Yeah.
Literally, you can do jumping jacks once they get locked on, and
it
just was the coolest thing, because the baby at that time was, barely a month old, and we got a great picture with all of us and the turkey, and just an unbelievable memory. So it was
That's
fun.
so cool.
That is super cool. It's got to be the earliest kill on video for a child like that, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever been on a hunt with a month old.
The youngest bone collector in the brotherhood, right?
Yeah,
now the sisterhood.
It was cool.
That's awesome. Well,
very cool. Well, we appreciate you coming on. We, like I said, kind of in the intro, we've known you guys for a long time, and it's always been fun to get together with you guys, kind of at the trade shows. Of course, nobody in the industry gets to get together enough. We wish we could kind of get together outside of just for work reasons, but it's always so much fun when we all get to hang out, because there's so many things that kind of intertwine us all, like the common bond basically of hunting and that passion. And what always amazes me about you guys, and you specifically, is how much you travel. I mean, you seem to go all over the country. So where, this year, now that the baby's here, has your schedule had to change a little bit, or are you still going to hit it hard this fall?
Well, first of all, going back to what you were saying about us, getting to hang out and stuff, I've been a big fan of the Drury boys, since Moby Dick was a minnow. I mean, this for me is really cool, because Mark and Terry are two of my deer hunting idols. back in the day when it all started, Mark and Terry and Don Kiske and Jay Gregory. I mean, those guys were the ones that got it started for me. And I just really, feel blessed to not only just have a relationship with the Drury crew, but also just to be honestly a friend of those guys. And they're some of the best guys there is. And the relationship to me is great. So with that being said, ask me that question again. Sorry about that.
Well, I was just saying, you always hunt so many places. Like, you travel to hunt quite a bit, and all three of you guys do. But this year with the baby, did you have to kind of alter your approach to your upcoming season, or is it still kind of that onslaught?
Things have changed a little. I'm gonna hunt as much, but before, being single and not really living anywhere, I was able to load my truck and trailer and all my gear and go. And I basically would only spend about 4 nights in my bed from middle of August till January. And so things are going to change this year. I'll have to schedule all my hunts where I know the exact dates. I'm going to only be able to put in, say I go to Kansas and I don't get it done, I'm only going to be able to be there 5 days. Yeah. Where before, if I needed to stay 8 or 9, it just wasn't a big deal. So in that respect, yeah, all my trips are going to be cut down, so I'll have to get home on time and leave for the next trip on time. And so that's going to be the biggest change. I'm going to hunt as much, but I think, as you guys know, time spent is your biggest adversary, or your biggest not adversary, your biggest asset. And it's just going to be different this year because I'm only going to be able to spend 5 days. There's probably a few trips where if I need to stay another day, I'll be able to, because my lady is very understanding. But things are going to change in that respect. I'm not going to drive everywhere. I'm going to do a lot of flying this year. So.
I'll give you one piece of advice. It seems like, and this is no matter what TV show you watch, just go the last day of your scheduled trip, right? You'll kill right away.
Exactly.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is, but I mean, you can watch any show from any company. It's that last day.
Last 15 minutes of daylight. Last day. We'll see what happens.
Maybe they just say it's the last day because once you kill, that technically is the last day. So.
That's right.
That's a good point. So what is on the calendar then? Where all are you going?
Well, I think I'm going to start in Kentucky, and then probably go to New Mexico for elk after that, and then I don't have the end of my September buttoned up yet. We go to a lot of the same places, so our schedule's somewhat made. And then I'll be in South Dakota the 1st of October. Middle of October, I'll probably hit Ohio. End October, I drew a really cool elk tag in Oregon, and it's a rifle tag, so I'm going to go to Oregon at the end of October. And then right after I get back from there, it's Wisconsin, Kansas, Illinois, South Dakota, Texas, Oklahoma, and then going into December, I'll probably hit Texas a couple more times, probably hunt South Dakota, a little more archery. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Is that all?
Yeah. Wow.
Sometimes if I get somewhere and I get it done quick enough, when we got enough for show, I'll skip over somewhere else. This year that might be a little different, but I'd like to hunt Missouri. I've never hunted Missouri before, so that's someplace I want to try to get to, and I've got a couple of guys that have offered me places to hunt there. But it's a full schedule. I mean, we do 20 original episodes for Bone Collector and 13 for road trips, so we got a lot of hunting to do, and I'm okay with it. For me, that's what it's all about. Signing hats and meeting people is fun, and it's great and it's rewarding, but I really love to hunt, and that's why I do this. It's just my passion. It always has been. It just killed me this spring. I had a baby, so I just stayed home. I didn't do any bear hunting or turkey hunting, and typically, I start in Florida, I go Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee. Then I make my way up to Kentucky, hunt my home state of South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, and it just hasn't happened. So I'm really chomping at the bit for fall to get here.
That's still a lot of time away. You do have an understanding wife, because that's still a lot of time away.
She's great. She's great. And she's, she knows my lifestyle, and it's just been great. So
good deal.
Wow. Well, I think sounds like you've got a heck of a November calendar ahead of you. So I think our question today will be perfect for that. It's rut related. And Matt, do you think we should get to that question of the day?
Yeah, let's do it. The question of the day is brought to you by Cabela's, the world's foremost outfitter.
Hi, my name's Chad Yanchiski. I'm from Yorkton, Saskatchewan in Canada. First off, I'd like to say I love the podcast. It's great, lots of good information. My question for you guys would be, during the rut, I hunt with one of my buddies, and we seem to be two different people when it comes to noise making. I barely try to take a breath, and he's making all sorts of noises. Never seems to fail for him, though. He always seems to kill a decent buck every year. What's your thoughts on how much noise you can make, or how quiet you need to be during the rut season?
All right, what do you think about that, Nick?
Well, you know, I totally think the quieter you are, the better. I try to slip in and slip out of every stand, as I know, all the people that hunt for the Drurys do. And I never want to be seen by a deer. I never want a deer to smell me. I never want a deer to know I'm anywhere near its chunk of woods. So I'm as quiet as I can possibly be. And I hunt with guys that are good hunters as camera guys. So sometimes I'm a little bit of a jerk when it comes to that, because I tell people to be quiet, and it's just super important. Once deer figure out where your stand is, I think you really decrease your chances. And I know things in Canada. I've hunted Canada a lot, and certain areas of the country, whether in the U.S. or Canada, I think deer are different. Like in Kansas, I think the deer are a little more docile. They walk by and they sometimes look up and they see you, and as long as you don't move and as long as you don't talk, they'll go back to their business and not be too scared. Now you get to Georgia, and a deer looks up in that tree and it sees you in the tree, it's out of there. So I think it's different. And I know in Saskatchewan, where I've hunted, it's probably not the same everywhere, but the deer are fairly docile. They'll come in, typically you're hunting over some kind of a bait pile, whether it be corn or a hay pile with some grain of some sort in it. That's great to me. I love that type of hunting, and I love Saskatchewan. But I also know that sometimes the deer in Saskatchewan aren't as spooky as maybe deer in other parts of the United States. Like I said, Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, probably even Missouri. The deer are a little spookier. So I just think you totally help yourself when you're quiet. And like I say, the more the deer figure out where you're at, or they smell you or see you or hear you, very sharply decreases your chances at harvesting a mature buck.
Yeah. There's always going to be that friend that can fall, backwards into a giant deer. Yeah. He's like, I smoke in the stand, and it's like, all right, this guy, you're not the typical.
Yeah, I love the fact that the loud guy, hey, he always ends up killing a nice buck.
Yeah.
That's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, Murphy's Law.
But would you agree with this, Nick? I 100% agree with what you said, that you want to minimize your level of intrusion or level of educating deer as much as possible. But at any time, if at any time of year, if you had to be a little bit louder or something like that, the rut is probably the time you might be able to get away with a little bit more than usual. Would you agree with that? For sure.
I think definitely, they're preoccupied, especially the mature bucks. A lot of times those does are the smartest ones, because they've always got a fawn to look after. They're on their toes all the time, and they're the ones that spot you. And a lot of times that buck he's just pinned onto her, and he's not leaving her. And so a lot of times, it's not even the buck that's figuring you out. It's those dang big old logger-headed swamp head does, and there's nothing better than taking one of those out of the herd. But those are the ones that sometimes bust you. And so you got to be really careful, because if you're hunting say you got a small acreage, if you're hunting 100 acres, and a little bit of intrusion is going to send your deer to the neighbors. So you got to really be careful with it.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for the whole access side of this, as far as getting in and out of your stands without, impacting your deer as much, whether it be the noise issue or other aspects of getting in and out? Anything you've learned along the way that's been helpful?
Well, I think anybody that knows their hunting property, if you're out there, if you're grooming it, if you're hiking looking for sheds, if you're turkey hunting it, just get out there, and you got to really find the nooks and crannies, ways in, the ways out. And if you don't know your piece of ground intimately, you'll never be able to do that. So you got to get out there. You got to beat the bush a little bit when it's not hunting season. Get out there in the spring, right after the snow's gone and shed season. Even if you don't find sheds on your ground and you know they're not there, get out, find the trails, find the ravines and the field edges and the ways to get into your stand undetected, because it is the biggest thing. I mean, if you're hunting, you know, again, I keep going back to small acreages. Let's face it, guys. I want to own my own property. I want to have, you know, 500 acres in Iowa or 600 acres in Iowa, but I don't have that luxury. So a lot of us are hunting really small pieces of ground. And the biggest thing is you can't intrude on that ground. Otherwise, you know, you're just spinning your wheels. So getting out there early season, checking for easy in and easy out accesses, figuring out where the deer are moving so that you can get in without blowing the stuff out of the timber and blowing out the bedding area. I think that's super key. And the only way to do that is just time spent in the woods. Get out there and beat the bush, you know, figure out where to go, figure out where the deer are moving. The trails are obvious at the early time of the year. That's the biggest thing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can never go wrong trying to be more careful, right?
Yeah.
That's never going to hurt you.
Yeah,
being more careful of how you get in and out, trying to be more quiet. On this noise front, another thing for a lot of people, like the way I hunt, kind of like you mentioned, Nick, I hunt a lot of small properties, stuff I don't own, even some public. And when you're doing that kind of hunting, lots of times we're going in and we're like hanging hunting. So we're mobile. We're setting up new stands and moving to different areas and stuff. And when you're doing that kind of style of hunting, and maybe you're trying to get aggressive and get kind of close to a bedding area, you really need to obsess about noise, especially any kind of metallic noise. I've found, and I've heard from a lot of other guys that are doing this style of hunting, any type of metallic clank or anything, it's so out of the norm in the woods that the deer will be especially sensitive to that.
That's a tough one too, because I mean everything, your bow, everything's making a noise, you know, with a stand. Everything, it seems like when there's no wind, right there in the, you know, in the morning, it's like getting into the stand. It's just the loudest thing, and it's amplified times 100.
Yeah. So what a lot of guys are doing, and I've done this not to as much of a degree as some people, but proactively preparing your equipment to minimize that noise. So like using hockey tape or some type of cloth tape and taping your tree stand, taping your climbing sticks, anywhere where you might have that metal on metal contact, trying to blunt that with some type of cloth or tape can reduce those little noises. Or going in there in the summer and greasing a squeaky climbing stick that goes up that every time you walk up it creaks, you know, finding those points where that noise is going to be and trying to minimize that, because especially like you're saying, Nick, these small properties where you're being hunted a lot, you know, on the surrounding area, so these deer are heavily pressured, any little tweak like that could, you know, educate the one mature buck in the area maybe that you're hunting. So if that's your situation, I do think the attention to detail is really important.
Sure.
Now,
and I think too, you'll find that a lot of the guys that are the successful guys killing big deer are definitely super, super meticulous. I mean, I look back on all the guys that when I was a cameraman that I hunted with, when I was a guide, all that kind of stuff, looking back, the guys that pay attention to detail and do that, they're the guys that are consistently killing the biggest deer. And, you know, you see it in all the top big deer killers in our industry. Now, I know there's guys that aren't on TV, that have never been in a magazine, that people don't know about, that are unbelievable hunters, maybe from Pennsylvania or South Carolina, and every year they're killing the biggest deer in their area, whether that be a 125 or a 117. You know, it's all relative, but those guys, the ones that are meticulous and pay super attention to detail, those are going to be the guys that year after year, you know, end up taking the nice buck in their area. And I think it's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think like Mark and Terry, just having hunted with them, it's amazing how we're saying meticulous, they're anal. Like, it's crazy. Like, they don't want you to be moving at all if you're the camera guy. And that's tough for the camera guy because, you know, a lot of times you're trying to get, you know, whether it's around a branch or a tree or a limb, and I know why they're like that, not only because of the big deer, but you mentioned it a while ago, Nick, the does. Like, there's always a doe off camera somewhere that you're not seeing when you're watching the final product at home that is staring right at the camera guy or the hunter, it seems like, every time. So as the camera guy, you got to be in the mindset of being the hunter from that standpoint. Like, you have to have, like, awesome hunting skill set, but you're hunting through the lens, you know, like that's what you're doing. You're hunting through that lens, and that's tough to do.
And I'm kind of when I'm in the woods, I don't know if it's because I was a guide for a long time or what, but I kind of take charge. And when I see a deer, it's just I don't know. I don't try to do it, but I tell the camera guys, don't move, stay still. You know, I'm over and over and over. And when I look at the raw footage of some of the hunts, I just think to myself, God, I must be kind of a jerk because I keep telling them to hold still, don't move, you know,
but you
all
got
that kind
to.
of stuff. And I don't know. That's just in my nature, I guess. I try to take charge so we can get the job done. And,
Yeah.
and the guys probably get mad at me. They're probably sitting up there going, well, I know I'm not supposed to move. Shut up, you know.
It takes so much, especially with two people in a tree. It takes so much for that one moment to go right, and so much work to get to that point. So, I mean, I know how you feel. Mark and Terry, and I know I'm the same way. Like, that's usually when I get the most vocal via whisper. But it's like, you know, you're stressed to the max, and you might only get that one chance in that spot.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, like, everybody better be on their A game.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of those opportunities.
Right.
Now, I want to throw a very different perspective on this whole issue related to making noise and access. It's crazy. It's out there, but this is an idea. I do not remember where I first heard about this, but I do know that Bill Winke was sharing a story of a friend of his who did this. And then I went and I kind of dove into it further and talked to some other people for an article for that I was writing. And basically the idea was if you were trying to access a stand during the rut and for whatever reason you didn't have a quiet way to get in there, and it was one of those perfectly, you know, those perfectly crystal quiet mornings, it's like 5 in the morning, frosty, every step you take is super loud. You know those mornings we were talking about, and you hate going in there, you just know everything's going to hear me. In that type of situation, the idea is you embrace the noise and you literally make a racket getting into your stand. Run to your stand. Sound like rutting deer, chasing, maybe even stop and grunt, and make a racket getting into your tree stand. Get in there, and basically you're decoy. You're a noise decoy. So instead of trying to mask your noise, embrace the noise. Try to sound like something natural. And I actually have had numerous people through social media reach out to me about this idea, saying that they've had bucks come in at first light just after they came racking through, making all that noise, coming right to their tree stand looking for all that noise.
I've done this with camera guys, but not on purpose.
It's obviously not something you want to do all the time, but as like a wild card type thing in a weird situation, you can kind of see how it might work.
Maybe,
in a tough situation.
I'd have a hard time. Just my mentality, I would have a hard time doing that.
What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Well, think about when you're sitting in your stand. I mean, you hear something in the woods, and you know, half the time you don't know if it's an armadillo or a possum or a squirrel or a deer. I mean, they all have their own noises, but you know, when you first hear that noise, if it's far off, all you can hear is leaves going. So, you know, I think we sometimes give deer a little more credit. They're animals, and yeah, they have a pretty good keen sense about them, but I don't think they hear a noise and go, "Oh, that's a man." You know, if you're 150 yards through the thick woods and they can't see you and they hear that the leaves and stuff going, you know, they probably are curious to it. And sometimes we probably overdo it a little bit, I think. But Bill Winke is somebody that I totally respect. He's a great friend of mine, and if he says it works, I'm going to try it.
It is an interesting idea, that's for sure. I've never used it getting into a stand, but I have had a time where it was like an evening sit. It was after dark, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make a racket getting out of here, and I'm going to spook deer. So I was like, screw it, I'm going to try. And I did like the hop jog, and kind of just embrace the noise, and it's hard to quantify whether or not it helped at all, but
right.
Mark and Dad always are, you know, they use their hoot owl to get out, or a coyote, or, you know, sound or something like that, and I can't do either of those. So usually I'm stuck with just making noise to get out.
And I'm always quiet no matter what. I just tiptoe around, and it's just I don't know, that's just how I am. You know, I just am super quiet all the time, and that's just what I try to do.
Definitely, I think the safe option.
Yeah, that's probably the safe bet.
Yeah. So what about other things during the rut, Nick? I mean, you're hunting many different areas of the country during the rut. You're experiencing a lot of different hunting situations. I guess I'm kind of curious, first off, have you seen the rut being different across all these places? I mean, is the rut when you're hunting down in Georgia dramatically different than in South Dakota or Iowa or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's all different. You know, to me the biggest thing is you know, and I've killed deer in warm weather too, but I think when the weather's cold, I think the deer have to be on their feet a little more, and they got to feed. You know, when you got 70 and 80 degree days, they don't have to get up and feed, you know, and they they lay around, they rut at night a little more. And another thing is just, I try not to worry about that too much. I just go to a spot and I just hunt really hard and try to put in my time, because there just is nothing more important than time in a tree. And so you can strategize all you want and do all this and all that, but if the deer doesn't walk by you, or if you're sitting I sit a lot of days from daylight till dark. So, if you're sitting on the couch watching TV during the rut, you're not going to kill one. So, it's just hard to pinpoint exactly what's the right thing to do, what isn't. And like I said, time spent for me is the biggest thing, because I know I'm only in a spot a certain amount of time, so I sit there as long as I possibly can. When
you're planning your strategy for the fall, are you trying to plan it so that you're chasing the rut somewhat? Different areas.
I have the key spots that I like to hit at the best times of the rut. Usually in Kansas, say like the 6th through the 12th or 15th of November. I think that's in my area where I hunt is the prime cruising time. I think they're really moving heavy. You start to see somewhat of a lockdown towards the end of that week, but in the beginning, I think the big bucks are really on their feet. They're moving. They're responding to calls really good, and that's what I love about Kansas is it's semi-open where I hunt, and so I can sit on the edge of a big CRP field or on the edge of a swamp, and I can see a deer and call to him, and I can read his body language, and I can see what he's doing and how he's going to respond to the call. And to me, that's one of the coolest places, because the deer buck to doe ratios are really good. There's not an outrageous number of does, so the bucks kind of have to search for does, and so the calling and everything works good. And so to me, that's like one of the tags that I get almost every year. And so as far as the rut goes, that's the one place that I really want to be, because it is such a great spot, and all the little tactics and tricks work there because of that. So I do chase the rut, and I hit probably my favorite spots to whitetail hunt, which are my home state of South Dakota, Kansas. A buddy of mine has a really neat farm in Illinois that's good. I shot a 170 there 2 years ago.
Nice.
And so, I do chase the rut. I love the rut. And kind of when the rut winds down and then you go back to hunting food in late season again and it gets super cold and all that, it's not quite as fun as the rut, but the rut just is like a treasure chest. You never know what's going to happen when you open it up. And if you put yourself in the right states and in the right places, you could kill huge. When I shot 173 last year in Iowa, and I shot a 168 that had a 10-inch point busted off last year in Kansas. So
nice.
Those are both great rut hunts. So
yeah, what can you describe for us some of your favorite types of rut stand setups? What are those spots like that you just love during the rut?
I honestly love a spot where I can see a lot. The place that I hunted last year was on Gabe Adair's farm, and I'll give him the credit. He set the stands, and he knows the place, but he has the stands right where I would have had him. It's right on the edge of a big CRP area. He's got a little food plot on the bottom. There's 2 or 3 ridges with timber, and from any one spot, you can see 300 yards and all the way around you. And so the deer that I killed there, it came out on this food plot. It was about 200 yards away, and I snort wheezed and grunted to it, and it actually was headed for a little fawn to check her. He had been locked down. This was at the end of November. I'd been there already about 2 or 3 times and had put in a bunch of days hunting. Well, I grunted at him, and he turned and he ran straight to the bottom of my tree. And so I like that scenario where you can see a lot, especially during the rut, because if you see a cruiser out there, you want to throw something at him. And I just feel a lot of times if you're in the thick timber, you're not able to see as far. Yeah, you may be able to blind call and get one to come, but chances are when you do that, he's going to circle downwind in the timber and get your wind. So an open setup is really key for me in the rut. And being from South Dakota, I grew up hunting in the wide open, and so I like to burn up the CRP with my binoculars. I'm naked without a pair of binocs. I can't go to the tree stand without binoculars. And so just that element of being able to see the deer and being able to, throw some calls to him is just so key. And in states where you've got really good buck to doe ratios, and the mature bucks are on their feet looking for the next doe, the calling and stuff works really great. So that's what I like.
Can you elaborate on the calling techniques you use? I mean, like, when do you use a grunt? When do you use XYZ? Any specifics?
When I see a buck, you just learn to read their body language, and you can tell if he's going to feed. He's usually walking. He's got his head up. He's cruising. If he's looking for does, he's got his nose to the ground. He's really searching hard and zigzagging back and forth, like a bird dog. And so in those situations, especially if I know it's one of the dominant bucks in the air, I'll throw a snort wheeze at him because, I mean, obviously he's the king of the ground there, and he's going to want to investigate anything like that. So I'll typically throw a snort wheeze first. Like I did this year in Iowa, the buck came out, I snort wheezed to him. He didn't come to it, but he bristled his back up. And the only reason I believe that he didn't come was because there was a fawn feeding in the end of this food plot. So he started making his way over toward her, and I think as he got close, he kind of recognized that she was a fawn. And then I threw out some growl type grunts to him. And he turned and looked, and I didn't call. I just was real still and quiet. And then he turned and walked a little more, and then I kind of hit him with a, that really cool growl. And he just turned and came. So at that point, when he turned and started to come, it's over. I put my call down. I don't ever call again because he knows. I mean, he knows exactly where your stand is.
He's looking.
And, so he literally came right to the base of my tree, and I shot him at, I was about 22, 24 feet up, and it was on a little slope, so I was quite a bit above him, but he literally was 5 yards below me.
Wow.
And literally came to the base of the tree. So I think it's important that once you get their attention, you don't call again. You got to just let them come, and then if they get off track one way or another, maybe give them a little grunt. But I don't care what you're hunting, whether it's turkeys or deer or coyotes or elk, whatever. As soon as they hear that first call and they acknowledge it, whether they look or whether they bugle back or gobble back or howl back at you, they know exactly where you're sitting. So, they have the uncanny ability to pinpoint the exact blade of grass that you're sitting by. So you just got to get ready and let it happen.
So in that setup, you said it was literally 5 steps, and you're pretty elevated there. What, kind of take us through the shot itself and the angle that you're taking, or just where you're placing or aiming at exactly to make sure you're hitting the valves.
When you're high like that, you take away your angles. You can't hit them right in the pocket behind the shoulder because it's underneath. So rather than shooting at a deer sideways like this, you're shooting almost at the top of his back, and so you got to put it in. You got to put it in a little bit different. And so with that one, I just put it right in the very top, angled it down, got both lungs, and he died in about 80 yards. But, there's advantages and disadvantages to being high up in a tree. Obviously, advantages are the wind's better, sight lines are better. Disadvantages, at close shots, you take away your shot angles, and you can end up hitting one lung, you can end up hitting them high, maybe even spining them, which I guess isn't a bad thing because they're laying at the bottom of the tree. But shot angle is very important, and when you get super high like that, it cuts it down on the close shot. So you really got to, pick a hair, so to speak, and just make a really good shot. Otherwise, you can shoot over them or get one lung, and as we all know, one lung deer can live or go a really long way and be, tough to find. So
I'm switching gears a little bit on you, but this kind of made me think about it when we were talking about a close shot. You had a kill, it was a mule deer, right? 2 years ago,
right.
2 falls ago, that literally you stalked up on. You had the wind, obviously, and you stalked within feet of that deer. So I mean, it won best big deer at the Golden Moose Awards, or the Outdoor Sportsman Group Awards, or whatever they call it now. But I mean, it was an incredible hunt. So when you're walking up or sneaking up, kind of stalking that deer and getting that close, when you're at full draw, what are you aiming at when you're so close, or is it almost you're so close you can't miss it?
Yeah, it happens so fast. So what I was doing there was I literally had to keep telling myself, because I kept wanting to look around my peep sight and look at the deer.
Yeah.
So I kept telling myself, to look at him through my peep and keep my pin on him, because when he came out of there, it was going to happen fast. So as soon as he got to his feet, I had it on him and I released, and luckily I hit him really good. It could have went either way. But in that instance, I was at full draw, and I kept wanting to kind of look around, and so I literally just kept saying, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So I just kept looking through my people. Then the wind started blowing harder and harder, and there was so much noise that he didn't even know I was there. So I had to start. I was at full draw for so long, I started going, Meow. And then when he poked up and looked, he saw my cameraman, Kyle, standing in his lane, in his row. And then he looked up and kind of saw me right over the top of him. So I was on him at that point, and when he got up and gave me his vitals, I shot him. And then he actually went out and stopped, and then kind of kept going again, but I could tell he was hit good, so I just shot him again at about 35, and then he went down fast. But yeah, that was one I didn't know how I was too close. I really was. I got to 40 yards, and I sat for about 30-40 minutes waiting at 40 yards, waiting him, because I was right in his row. So I knew when he stood up, I'd just be able to shoot right down the row. And a lot of times those bucks out there, unless they got to get up and take a leak, they're going to lay there all day. I mean, they lay there till dark. So I just said heck with it. He wasn't a 200 incher, so I wasn't worried about blowing him out, because if I didn't get him, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. I would have been disappointed. It was a nice deer, but I just wanted to see how close I could get, and I literally was standing right over the top of him, 2.5 steps.
Jeez.
And for the longest time, I had my 20-yard pin right on his eyeball, and so I was just waiting, because I figured when he jumped up out of there, his chest was going to go about where his head was. And it just got to be so long that I had to try to stand him up, and it worked out, luckily. A lot of times they just blow out of there and you never even get a shot.
Yeah. It's incredible footage. If you haven't seen it, is it anywhere online that people can see it, or is it just...
Yeah, I believe it is. I think you can see it on my Facebook page, on my Nick Mundt Facebook page. It's just a really cool hunt, man. It was the closest I've ever gotten to it. I've stalked a lot of deer in my life, because like I say, I'm from South Dakota. That's how we hunt. We spot and stalk, and so it's the closest I've ever been, on a stalk, about 2.5 yards. So.
What was the wind speed?
Well, when we started, it was completely dead. We spotted the deer from over a mile away, and then we watched him lay down. And these fields are real rolling, and so what we would do is I would go forward to the next little hill and spot him, and then my camera guy Kyle Metzger would come up behind me, and then he'd stand where I was. So then I would go down through the dip and come up to the next spot and spot him, and then I'd motion him to come. So we kept doing that and doing that and doing that. And then finally, when we got about 300 yards from him, I just jumped right in his row. So I knew I was in his row, and I just made my way to him slowly, slowly, slowly. And then as we got there, the wind started picking up more and more, and it got to about probably 12 miles an hour, which isn't really high. But in that Milo, it just makes a ton of noise, which is perfect. And then we just slowly slipped closer and closer. And then as we got to him, the wind was kind of quartering in my face. And so I went a couple of rows to the left, because I felt like his head, he was looking to the right. So I kind of wanted to come in behind him, but I knew the wind was going to be good. So just kept getting closer and closer. And I don't know, I just got pretty lucky, really.
I love hearing stories like this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's cool.
Now, Nick,
back to the, sorry to interrupt you, but back to the outdoor, Sportsman's Awards, we did win best deer footage, but that, I didn't think I was going to win that, because Mark's footage on that big giant deer that he shot, I mean, that was just truly a monarch of a buck, and a buck of a lifetime, not only for Mark, but for anybody that deer hunts. I mean, that thing is just amazing.
That was Bucktober. That was the footage where he's coming up and he's kind of got the frost on his back, and I mean, it was just, the sun was coming up. It was a pretty scene.
Beautiful footage.
That's the cool part about those awards, though. I mean, like, you think you might have captured a once in a lifetime deal, and then we see what we're up against. Yeah. Usually for the first time that night, you see what you're up against.
Once in a lifetime deal. It was.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. One of the best whitetail hunts ever captured. Just the footage is great. The deer is great. Everything about it makes a great shot. I mean, but you just never know. It's just all a matter of opinion.
But then you see what Nick accomplished there, and stalking up on a wild animal in the middle of no,
Oh, yeah.
no
There's
terrain.
a lot of
or-
great stuff being captured.
That's cool, and that's the beauty of all these camera crews being out there in the wild all fall and all year. You know, we're getting to see, as viewers, see stuff that you never have seen before.
Yeah.
You know, and that's pretty neat. So
Some very cool stuff.
And one of the cool things to me is I was a cameraman for 9 years for Realtree, and so I'm a really big advocate of good footage, steady, clear. I love animals. My whole life, it's been my passion has been animals. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet, but I wasn't smart enough to go to vet school. So I figured rather than save them, I'd just shoot them. You know. So to me, unbelievable footage is where it's at. Yeah. I mean, I just love. I don't even. You know, people ask me too. Do you ever go hunting without the camera? You know, I really don't, because I like sharing the moment with somebody, and I really like getting the footage because I like to show it to my family and friends. I like people to see it.
Yeah.
And there's just something about capturing a hunt on video and getting really good footage of the animal. It's just so cool to me. It's really what drives me. I just love getting killer footage. I mean, it's just so cool.
For everything to happen and come together, I said it a little earlier, at that one moment, and you have two people with you and a camera and all that equipment, like, it's pretty special for it to actually come together at that moment of truth. So as the hunter, you just hope you don't mess it up.
That's right. It happens. It sure does.
It does.
Speaking of the moment of truth, Nick, you have got to have more opportunities to draw back or pull the trigger on deer than almost anyone out there, given all the hunting trips you're going on and the number of opportunities you have out there. So you're encountering that moment of truth a ton.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've learned that's helped you handle that better? Is there anything that we can be thinking about or doing to better handle that moment?
You know, I don't know, man. It's repetition. I mean, when I get in the moment, I get in the zone, and to be honest with you, there's times when I look back and I think to myself, I don't even remember putting the pin on the deer. It just comes natural.
I blacked out.
but I think a lot of what's helped me is just shooting a lot of deer. You know, I've had an opportunity to shoot a lot of does, and obviously, you know, we shoot a lot of bucks too. But going to places, you know, early in my I guess you call it TV hunting career, went to places in Texas where we shoot a lot of deer. And you know, on one particular show that we did at Vatoville, we went there, T-Bone and Michael and I, and maybe one or two other guys. There was 5 of us, I think. We shot 57 deer in 3 days. They're on a strict management program with the state, and they've got to harvest a certain amount of deer. So, you know, Vato, our buddy, called us up and said, hey, you guys come down. You know, we're not going to shoot any trophies. We're just going to shoot culls and management deer and does. We got to get these deer out of here. We got way too many deer in the state. With our MLD tags, we've got a certain amount that we have to meet. So we went down there and we had just a blast of a time. And so it's stuff like that that I think really helps you become a better shooter under pressure. And there's nothing like letting the air out of a bunch of does. I mean, and it just helps you get ready for that moment when the big one comes, because, hey, there's a lot of stuff you got to think about when the big buck's coming. You got all the movement and scent. You got, you know, you got to have all the points ready on your bow. You know, I go through a checklist every time I shoot. T-Bone has helped me a lot because he's a great shooter. So check my bubble, make sure my kisser button's in the right spot. You know, just make sure everything's right. And being able to execute just comes with practice. And so I've been with people before that haven't killed a lot of deer with their bow, and they're waiting, you know, on the big one. It's like, I'm not going to shoot that one. I don't want to shoot a doe. I'm waiting for a big buck, blah, blah, blah. Well, all I can say is you better get some practice, because there's a big difference between shooting a deer target in your backyard and making great shots on it, and getting out there in the moment of the truth when you got a big buck coming and your heart's pounding 1,000 miles an hour. You know, your heart starts beating more, you got to breathe more, and you tend to hold your breath because you're trying to be quiet, so then your heart beats even more. Your head starts spinning, you're seeing cross-eyed. And there's just a lot that goes into making a good shot.
You painted the picture pretty well there.
Yeah. It happens, and I still get pumped up. My heart beats hard. I've learned how to kind of harness the energy, and then after I shoot, you know, everything kind of boils out, and I get that, you know, fist pump and, you know, breathing hard and just can't believe it happened. And a lot of times you just spend so much time in the tree, and you know, you just don't ever know if it's going to happen. Like last year, I was in Iowa a bunch of times, and seeing big deer and they're just out of range. And I rattled into like a 165-inch 9-pointer. He came in and he was 20 yards, but he's behind some brush, and an armadillo or a possum was walking underneath me in this ditch, and he heard it walking, so it stopped him, and my heart's beating 1,000 miles an hour. All I got to do is get him to come 2 steps, you know. And then then you go through all these scenarios and it doesn't happen, and then finally, after spending all that time, it's just the deer comes right in, and I shoot him at 5 yards, and it was almost like easy. So, you know, there's just all these different scenarios that go into it, and
the
practice.
The common theme there is your time in a tree. You know, you're spending a lot of time to have an opportunity, you know, and I think, you know, a lot of guys, I'll get emails and stuff through our website, and they'll say, I've hunted my whole life and I've still never killed anything. You know, so part of that is hunting smarter, not harder. Mm-hmm. I think part of that is you got to be where the deer are. I mean, if you don't have a spot that you have, you know, deer, you're not going to have any luck. It just is what it is. So in those instances, you might have to travel, you know, and it's not everybody has the ability to get the time off or afford maybe a lease or to go to an outfitter. But I mean, you know, sometimes if you just don't have the deer in your area, you may have to go somewhere else. And, you know, so that moment of truth, to your point, the only thing you can do is make sure you're prepared for it and the way you've been shooting leading up to that point. Because there's a lot of things that you can't prepare for, the biggest being how you're going to feel, how you're going to react when the moment of truth actually happens. I mean, I know guys that, you know, like Coondog, and he's killed some good deer through, you know, his career, but he always gets amped up, and he can't. That's who he is. Yeah. He cannot help it. You know what I mean? So,
and, you know, take a guy like Coondog, who is a police officer. You know, you'd think that he'd be cool and calm under pressure, but I'd hate to have him pull me over. He'd be like, you know? But you know, it's so hard. It's so hard to, if you don't get the opportunity to shoot a lot of deer, to get that experience under your belt. And I know people in, you know, some of the states that the deer aren't as big, you know, those people are some of the best hunters there are. And, you know, maybe they have never even killed a 130, and they make the great shot. They do everything right. And so sometimes I think, you know, we're lucky to be able to hunt places that have big deer, but the people that don't get the opportunity to hunt deer, I think they still have that get up and go for the hunt. You know, sometimes we lose sight of what hunting really is. And I think in all of our pursuits for big deer, I think sometimes people lose sight of that. Hey, this is a family thing. It's a tradition. It's something that we take time off of work for, and it's something that we love spending our spare time doing. And so sometimes, you know, size takes away the tradition and the history of the hunt. Now, obviously, all of us love hunting, and you know, it's what we love to do. And even if we're not killing big deer, we're still going to be hunting. But I just think that people that hunt in places where there aren't big deer, and some people can't afford to go to Kansas, you just have to enjoy the place that you hunt, and the trophy is relative to your area and relative to who you are as a hunter. Now, I know a lot of guys in Pennsylvania that have never shot a 130. I mean, they really haven't. You know, they hunt hard. I get emails all the time. Well, you know, you think you're a great hunter, come to Pennsylvania. Hey, I completely agree.
I love those emails.
I know those guys have a tough time hunting, and same with like Georgia. You know, the people that hunt public land in Georgia, it is tough hunting. And so I give a lot of props to those people, because not only do they hunt day after day, year after year, season after season, and maybe never kill a big buck, but they still have the passion for it.
Yeah,
they're good hunters, you know. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if you're somebody that wants to hunt a different area, or hunt an area where there's legitimately big deer, just start save a little at a time, and reward yourself with a hunt to Kansas or a hunt to Iowa. You know, a lot of times if you put in for an Iowa tag, it might take you 4 years to get it, but there's some unbelievable public land in Iowa where you can go, you can set stands, and you can literally kill a 150-inch buck. So, you know, that's kind of would be my message to people that don't get to go to other states. and maybe would want to but never have. So, you know, it's just kind of a ramble on about that. Sorry.
No, I think it's a good point, and that, you know, it's kind of your situation. You're in Michigan. You know that it is what it is. The caliber of buck, it's the subspecies. It is what it is. So you make the best of what you have there. You put your all into the property you have to hunt. You do what you can, but you also travel quite a bit. You know, so
yeah. I mean, having realistic expectations, because I think that's one of the big things. And the TV, the media is amazing. It's a lot of fun. But at the same time, if people watch that and they see your dad and
reality,
right, it's not a circumstance that everyone has. And so I love looking at that stuff as entertainment. Like, it is fun to see that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try to tell myself that I'm not doing a good job if I can't kill 200 inches 2 years in a row. That's just not realistic for my circumstance. That's awesome that Mark can do that. It's awesome that Nick can go and hunt all these different places. That's incredible. I love watching it. But I know in Michigan, when I'm hunting little 40s and 50s that I have permission on, you know, if there's a 3-year-old that's 130, that is incredible for that area, and that's a huge challenge, and I'll be really stoked if I can kill it. And I think we all just need to look at that and have fun. Set realistic expectations, and you enjoy it a lot more.
The weird part in hunting, it's predominantly male, obviously, and guys are competitive by nature, so it becomes a contest of, you know, the size or the score, or I did this and you did that, and I'm, you know, and it's unfortunate because that kind of takes hold a lot of times. But really, I mean, what it boils down to, it doesn't matter the size. It doesn't matter how you're hunting. If you're out there and you're having a good time, by all means, man. If you're doing it legally, that's great. Enjoy it.
Absolutely.
You know? The jealousy I never quite understand. I'm sure, Nick, you guys run into that as well.
Yeah, and you know, we are lucky. You know, we are lucky, and nobody can say that we aren't. I mean, we get to hunt some great places. Do I own my own farm? No. Do I wish I did? Absolutely. But, you know, I've worked my butt off my whole life to get to where I'm at. And, you know, if people, you know, guy calls me and says, hey, I got 400 acres here in Illinois and it's phenomenal and I'm the only one that hunts it. I got a bunch of mature bucks. You want to come hunt? What am I going to do? Say, no, it's too good. I'm not coming down there. Too good, you know. And, you know, so I want to kill big deer. I really do. But I also know that there's a lot of people that don't have the opportunity. And do they want to? Yeah, but you got to create your success. So if you want to hunt big deer and you live in an area where there aren't big deer, you got to go to somewhere where there's big deer, you know. And like you were saying in Michigan, perfect example, if you got a 3-year-old on your ground that's 125, 130 inch buck and you can get him killed, that's killer, you know. Throw him on the wall and enjoy him for the rest of your life, because that might be the biggest buck you ever kill there. But if you want to go somewhere else, start saving your coins, because it's very rewarding when you get to go to a place like Iowa or Kansas and you don't even look at a 130, you know. So
it is fun getting to those places and seeing that it's a different world.
It is a different world.
It really is.
Before we've gone way long, but I always like it when we have guests like Nick, because it's such an easy, I mean, the conversation, fun. It's just a couple buddies hanging out, right?
I get kind of long-winded, sorry.
No, it's good. So I see you're sitting in what looks to be a trophy room. If you can, and if you want to, I'd love to see, you know, maybe one or two of your best, whatever. Show us some of your best deer, best memories. So, we did this with Stan Potts a couple podcasts ago, and it was ridiculous. Stan, of course, had a couple 200s.
Here's a couple. Yeah, I don't have any 200s, but these are South Dakota deer on the bottom. Up to the left is a Nebraska deer, and then a Wisconsin deer above it, and then
beautiful
over in this corner here. And I got about, I don't know, I probably have about 18 or 19 heads in here. I got about another 20 over at my girlfriend's mom's place, and then I got another 15 or 18 at the taxidermy shop. So this velvet buck is one that I killed in Wyoming a few years ago. He's like 145. I chased him for 7 days, missed him twice, and he actually kept coming back to the food plot, and I ended up getting him. He was an EHD survivor, so he didn't have any nuggets in his nugget sack. And then
he needed to go.
Yeah. So it was a really cool deer, a great hunt. And then that mule deer I shot in New Mexico, and this is a 163-inch Kansas buck there.
Wow.
Next to it. This buck here is a really cool buck. I don't know if you can see him very good or not.
Yep.
This is a buck I shot in Nebraska. He's 155, and he's probably got close to 10 inches busted off.
Wow.
But I killed him in a snowstorm in Nebraska. He was a pretty cool buck.
Nice.
And then this one, let's see, this one here, this is 100 and I just posted this one on my Instagram page as a little throwback, Nick's Big Game on Instagram. This was a buck I shot in Canada. He's a 6x6. I hunted him for 10 days, daylight till dark, 20 below zero. And finally, on the very last day, I had to leave at noon. He came out, and I got him, shot him with my muzzle loader. And seriously, I've never cried like that in my life. I cried for like 30 minutes because it was absolute hell.
Wow.
Torture sitting that long.
See, the last day, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And then this is a huge 8 I shot in South Dakota.
Awesome.
Wow.
He's a 160-inch 8-pointer.
Ooh.
Super wide, 7-inch brows, really long tines and beams. Just awesome hunt. Killed him in the sunflowers in South Dakota at a buddy of mine's place.
Is that pretty typical for South Dakota, that size of deer? Or I always think of a kind of a...
No, you know, this is a big one. This is my biggest buck I've ever killed in South Dakota for sure.
How wide was he? Do you recall?
How wide?
Yeah.
I think he was like 22 inside.
Nice.
Almost 25 outside.
Nice.
Jeez.
So this here's my biggest mule deer. Shot him in Mexico. I didn't really score him, but he was somewhere like 208 and 7/8.
It's somewhere in there.
He's got a 3.5-inch drop tine. Other than that, he's basically, you know, like a 205 typical. Just a giant, 50
Awesome.
inches of mass, and just my biggest deer by far. Over here is my bear. I got him in Russia, Big Larry here. And when I killed him, he was 10 foot 3 or 10 foot 4. His hide was squared. I mean, obviously he's wasn't that big on the body. I would say, you know, it's hard to say exactly, but big enough. I mean,
yeah.
He's big. So my ceiling is 9'6", and he touches the top of that with his head. So
Nice.
and then over here is a mule deer that I shot in Montana several years ago. He's right at 180. Shot him in the early 90s. And, you know, he was for a long time my biggest buck.
Looks really nice there.
Yeah. Wide.
Yeah, he's a really pretty one. And these two are probably my two of my most favorite whitetails. This guy here is a 175-inch 10-pointer with a tiny little sticker that I shot in eastern Colorado. Just a massive, big, heavy beams and long points.
Heck of a Colorado
just
buck.
a beautiful buck. And then this one beside him here is one I shot in Ohio a couple years, and he was 163 with basically no brow tine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he's got good mass.
Jeez.
yeah, and then you know, on the wall behind, a bunch of bears that I've shot over the years. And oops, where am I going here? There we go.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
You got a great setup down there, Nick.
Yeah. Thanks for taking us through the trophy room.
Yeah, and then this is my best antelope ever. He's just a hair over 80 inches, so he was a good one. Shot him with my bow in Colorado too. So that's just some of my stuff. I got a lot more, but my house isn't quite big enough, so I got to build me a new trophy room.
It's a good problem to
I was
have.
going to say, that's the problem we all want to have.
Nick, I want to make sure we have you back on again because we didn't even get to go into any of the good stories back in your cameraman days. I'm sure you have some tales to tell.
Tons.
Yeah.
And I appreciate being on, you guys. This has been great for me. And let me make sure I'm plugged in here. Sorry. Hold on. I'm gonna lose you again. Hold on. Dang it.
Hey, we're not live, so it's all good.
I'm sorry. God dang it. My thing came unplugged. So, all right.
Yeah, so we're going to have you back on for another podcast. We want to hear all the good stories, all the dirt from all the years where you were packing the camera. Because you said,
be some good stuff.
was it 8 or 9 years you were camera guy?
9 years.
9 years.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So
Next time.
That's right.
Good.
That's
yeah.
an
And
excuse
hey,
to have you
look,
back.
I get long-winded. Sorry, guys. I got the gift of gab. So
No,
You fit right in here.
it's a perfect podcast guest. So Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
oh man, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Been
Thank
a
you.
lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I guess we'll leave our listeners and viewers with our last couple quick updates. If you want to send in a question of your own for a future episode, you can do that. We'd love it if you did. You can head over to wiredtohunt.com/100%wild. It's very easy. You can leave your own voicemail question there. We'd love to hear it. And you can subscribe to the audio version on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play. Very easy to do, and you'll get all the new episodes right on your phone or tablet or computer. And Matt?
You could check out the video version of this by subscribing to the Drury Outdoors YouTube channel. And we have all the former episodes up. I think we're into the 30s now.
40s.
40s on
Yeah.
the podcast. So there's plenty of content to go through, especially now that the season's coming up. You're going to want to go back and check out. We've had some great guests through the last year or so.
yeah.
Check that out. And, of course, we have a bunch of new original hunts on YouTube under DOD TV. And, as always, follow us on social media. And, Nick, before we go, I did want to give you a chance to plug. You have a new show on the Outdoor Channel, original series called Survival Science.
Yes, sir. Yep. Survival Science. Its main showing is Monday night at 9 Eastern. And then, of course, Bone Collector and Realtree Road Trips as well. So
Awesome, man. Thanks again for coming on. We appreciate it, buddy. Good luck this fall.
thank you guys, man. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys have good luck too.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for watching and listening.
Peace.